Welcome to the Build Your Beautiful Business podcast with your host, Julie C. Butler. If you're looking to build the business of your dreams, then this is the space you want to be in. Join Julie as she talks about ways that you can successfully scale your profitable dream business, one that will give you ultimate time freedom and the abundant lifestyle you deserve. Julie will take you by the hand, sharing with you her business savvy strategies as she chats it up with her favorite online entrepreneurs. You'll get a weekly dose of boosted confidence as you learn as they reveal their insight, tips, and tools that you need to start building a profitable dream business of your own, one that you'll love and that works for you on autopilot.
Hello, welcome back to the BBB Summit. I'm your host, Julie C. Butler. Today on the podcast, we have our first guest male, LaShawn Smith. LaShawn is a business creator and software developer who helps people predictably navigate their entrepreneurial journey. After spending over a decade as a software executive at Amazon and Microsoft, he uncovered patterns to use process as a tool to win in business more often. He's applied his toolkit to start new businesses, produce feature films, and turn around struggling businesses. He is the founder of the investment firm CAGR Investments, which stands for Compound Annual Growth Rate and is a financial term that measures compounding growth over time. That serves as a North Star for the company and a reminder of the power of compounding our financial returns, relationships, and time. LaShawn shares his blueprint with aspiring business owners to help them avoid his mistakes. Hey there, welcome back to the show. I have LaShawn Smith on with me today. LaShawn, it's so nice to have you. And we were just having this conversation before I hit the record button, and you are the first guy on the podcast. So I'm very excited about that.
Thank you for the privilege, and it's great to be here.
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you. And so before we dive into today, which is going to be a super awesome topic, we're going to talk about should you start a business and what kind. I would love for you to take a minute to introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, my name's LaShawn Smith. I'm based here in the Seattle, Washington area in the US, but I've lived all over. This is the 11th place that I've lived. And so one of the things I love about living in different places is just meeting new people, expanding your network, and exposing yourself to different things. One of the things I like to observe is when I had moved to a new place, I realized no one knew me there. And so while on one side I had to build a new social circle, on the other side, I had a chance to fix all my personal flaws, and now people understood and knew me through, hopefully my new improved version. And so I've just been around. I started my career building software, and at the same time attempting to kind of find my place in the entertainment industry. And then over the years, they've kind of converged where I've largely built technology products for something related to the media. And so these days, I invest in small businesses, and I do a fair amount of mentoring to underrepresented groups just to help them figure out how entrepreneurship might work into their life. And so I spend a fair amount of my time just talking to people on the phone, sometimes their group chats. And there are people who are many times trying to figure out if, starting a business, or if so, what type might be right for them. And hopefully we can get into more of that today. But what it comes down to is, like many things, you need the right mindset, you need the right skills, and you need to build the right network. And so it's like how do we get our best body? We know we got to eat right, and we have to, have the right workout plan. All of that is the simple part, but like, how do you show up every day and actually do it? And then how do you do that with all the, competing responsibilities that we have as we move through life? And so I get really energized when I find someone else who's energized about their journey. So that might sound a little weird, but my energy comes from someone who's like, I got the motivation, the discipline. I just need, a more complete support structure. And then I try to be one of the pillars for the people I come in contact with.
I love that because that makes you then your passion comes through, right? Like you're passionate about doing what you are doing. So
yeah,
when you mirror that with someone who's equally passionate about starting that journey, the energy combined is awesome, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I love that because they, like there's actually been like over the last 6 months to a year, several people that have come into my life and they're like, well, not come into my life, like people I know or whatever. And they're like, oh, like they just don't they see that they don't want to have a job forever, right? And they're
Right.
like, what could I do? What could I, like, I have a friend who's going through this right now. She's like, I just don't know what that looks like yet, right? Like trying to figure out what that thing is that they could do online, right? Sometimes they haven't figured it out yet.
Exactly. And, I like to start this from a place of, kind of the end of the game. I use the word destination. You may hear me use that word a lot. When we're trying to figure out what our plan should be, I like the idea of like figure out your destination and then work your way back. Now, that doesn't need to be your final destination. You might say, all right, for the next 2 years, I'm going to do X, and then that's going to unlock something maybe I don't even know what it is. But I love this idea of figure out where you want to go, then work your way back. And then, yes, we all have a different set of responsibilities and commitments that we have to balance as we're working through that. So person A and person B are going to have a different set of kind of twists and turns on their road. But there is a system that I think is fairly repeatable. And to your point on like, should it be a business or not? The way I like to think of it very broadly is, almost anyone can get rich slow. And I don't know how to make a ton of money in 90 days or three, like whatever, internet person and guru is kind of preaching, where you can make money fast. I haven't found that way, but I do have this general rule of thumb that says almost anyone, working a regular job, if they have the right behavior, they can reach financial independence in about 20 years. If you start a business, you can do that in about 10 years. And if you're willing to make a bunch of sacrifices around the rest of your life, it's possible in 5 years. And so, there are probably other guests that could, talk about how to, reduce those time windows, but it helps for me to have a kind of some bounding boxes when I talk to people and they say, okay, well, what do you actually want to do? And I think for most people, they want financial independence or at least stability. They want to enjoy what they do day in and day out, and hopefully have the right level of time left for the friends and families and other folks in their life. And if you can find the right framework to balance all three of those, I think more of us can be happy.
Yeah, and I love what you said about how, it's not a get rich quick scheme, right? Like it's not oh, what's that word again? Gratification, instant
Yes,
gratification,
not that.
right?
Yes.
It's not that. So going into business, yes, there are those people who like the next day it just clicked, right? There's
Yeah.
not that many of them, right?
Yes.
Most of the millionaires or multi six-figure business owners or whoever you look up to or whoever you aspire to be, they did the work. They did the work, they put in the time, and eventually they got there, right? Like compound effect, I guess, right?
Definitely. And what I also like to catch myself is sometimes we use these words that mean different things to each other. Even when I use the word rich, for some people, it's like that means like some crazy number. And then for other folks, it might be something a bit more modest. And so whether, the goal is 50 million, 5 million, a half a million, $50,000. I'm speaking in US dollars right now. Folks can hopefully translate. But regardless of what that number is, it's what mean. What does it mean to be rich to you? There is a popular Netflix show, How to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi, and he goes and talks to couples about how do they design their rich life. And what I love about that is there's no preconceived notion that it's really all about the money. It's really about designing the experiences and kind of the cadence to your life. And so for some people, that means being able to travel more. Other folks, that means spending more time with their family. For other folks, maybe they do want to start a business, but they want to have enough freedom that they're not under the thumb of investors. And so maybe they want to make some money in their first step, and on their next business, they can do it at their own pace. And so I really like the idea that, what is rich is what we define. And then you just have to put in the steps to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, it's important to know too. Like you don't have to make $1 million to have the success that you truly desire, right? Like sometimes that might look like $50,000, like you said, right? For others. So I think that's important to remember not to define success as like you're right. Like it looks different for every single one of us, and that's okay, right? Like
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
right. Like to for you to go out there and be successful, it doesn't have to be six figures. It doesn't have to be $1 million. It can truly be whatever that number is for you. It might not even be a number. It might be rich in terms of having a successful business and having like really good relationships with other entrepreneurs, like whatever, like it's kind of like a package deal, right?
100%. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
what I find interesting is when I spend time with folks in my circle who are the most financially successful, what I find is that even though some of them didn't go into it with a target number, it's the compounding nature of their behavior that really is driving it. And then making a lot of money comes as an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a side effect of them compounding their daily and weekly behavior, and that I think is the trickiest thing for folks to really figure out. It's like, what can you do every day to get better? And the Saturday entrepreneur versus the person who can, despite our calendar challenges, find 30 to 90 minutes, 5 to 6 days every week to do a bit of time and work. I think those folks are most successful. It's similar to people who play instruments. You actually can become better at, say, playing the guitar if you practice 30 minutes a day versus kind of cramming all of that practice into like one day on the weekend. And
Yeah.
so I think similarly, we can compound our way to business success if we have the right consistency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that, doing something that you like, figuring out what to do is, I think, first step, but then doing something that you're passionate about, like you said, right? Like just makes the journey so much more pleasing. And you, I think, get more of that balance, right? Like that business work slash family slash life balance, right? Which is important too
Yes.
for our own sanity.
And at some point, whatever you do, it's going to suck. And so that's why I feel like it's a helpful reminder to ourselves, like pick something that you're really drawn to and passionate about. I would go further, get a bit into, how I look at starting a new business or even evaluating one. I believe that you should first figure out what you're obsessed with. And that means something different to everyone. But you're not going to stop something when you're obsessed, even when it gets hard. And
Mm-hmm.
then figure out what customers, audiences, tribes that you deeply connect with who have some set of shared values and share parts of your obsession, or where your obsession can help create value in their life. And so first it's like, what do I care about? And then who do I care about? And if we just pause and ask ourselves those questions, that's a huge unlock. And folks who say, I've had, people come to me. I had this woman I was talking to, this was a few months ago, and she's super sharp, super smart. I mean, she's way further ahead, in her life than where I was at 24, 25, however old she is. And she's like, well, LaShawn, I did this analysis and these look like the industries that are going to make the most money. And I was like, time out, time out. We don't want to do that, right? Because at some point, any of those options are going to become sucky, and you're going to find yourself like, am I just doing this to make money? And you'll lose the juice to power through the sucky part. And the ability for your business to stay alive, the ability for you to find the motivation and discipline to keep showing up day over day, that's one of the most powerful pieces and kind of ingredients to success. So if you pick something that you don't love, it's a high percentage that you're going to give up, and you're almost kind of guaranteeing that you don't win.
Mm-hmm. And I love that, because this could be also, it could be someone who's just starting to look at starting a business, but also like sometimes halfway, like you've started a business maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and you're like, yeah, like I'm being called to another direction, right? So
Yes,
this could
giving
also
yourself
speak to
permission
you.
to make those
Yeah.
changes. That's why I like the destination driving metaphor, because you allow yourself to take a rest stop, you allow yourself to make a turn. You are in control of the vehicle.
Yeah.
The key piece, the requirement, I think, for everyone though, is you need to have a destination.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also allowing ourselves to see the possible opportunities in front of us, and allowing ourselves to maybe think about or even go that way, right? When the fork comes. I'm sure it's happened to you, LaShawn, before, where
Right.
you've had several, your journey has shifted and changed along the way, right? And so, I mean, it happened to me. I was like a photographer, then actually I had a job, but then I was a photographer, and then I quit that for network marketing, and then I came back to photography, and here I am now with like an online business, right? So allowing ourselves to look back and say, like, does this fuel me? And if the answer
Right.
is no, right? Allowing ourselves to let go of that and move towards the opportunity or the open door or whatever that looks like, right?
Yes, and part of what you're hitting on is something that I've experienced, and maybe some of your folks in your audience have also experienced. When we start to cement, around a certain idea or concept, we start to not only romanticize it, but it just becomes very real in our brain. And then when we find the courage to start telling, our friends, our family, maybe some of our former coworkers, it's almost like you've made this social contract, and you don't want to fail in their eyes. And so
Right.
people are like, what are you up to? And I think sometimes we can feel self-conscious if it's like, oh my goodness, every time I talk to LaShawn, he has like this, new harebrained idea. And so, you feel a little funny if the thing you told folks about that you care about isn't working. And again, we have to really get out of our heads on that. And the goal is to iterate your way to the right, kind of focus area. And that saying, double your failure rate, double your success. You have to just go do things that aren't working, and I like to embrace it. I had a retail business in food and beverage that sold salads, and it looked beautiful. I spent, it kind of pulled some of my different skill sets on design. We had a great app for people to order these handcrafted salads. We had great salad dressing. Like if you walked into the store, you're like, oh, these folks have it figured out. And we went out of business. And why did we go to business? I didn't have the right experience on managing like probably one of the hardest types of businesses, like high spoilage food business. Like lettuce goes bad, salad dressing goes bad often. So there's all sorts of things that I had gotten wrong. And here in the US and other places, there's a website called Yelp that kind of rates different businesses. And I have a screenshot on my hard drive that I saved that it says Fine Salads. That was the name of the company. And then at the bottom, it says permanently closed. And I take it like a badge of honor that like we had to shut down this business because it's a reminder of all the things that I learned out of that. And then I
Yes.
just gave myself permission to go move on to the next idea. And it doesn't mean that, all right, there aren't financial implications, there are opportunity costs. If I had been working some other opportunity, I don't want to get in my head and be swimming around all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. It's just like, okay, this is what I learned. Now I'm going to move forward. And so many other opportunities have unlocked from me having that experience. And so again, so much of it is just putting ourselves in the right mindset and giving ourselves permission to explore and find the right thing. And maybe it's almost not find, it's like you have to choose the right thing because there's so many options. And part of how we choose is exposing ourselves to more opportunities, even if we see people who necessarily don't look like us or who aren't doing the same thing. We can find inspiration in different places. And once you can articulate, like, this is my destination, that's why I keep coming back to that metaphor. There's so many people who may already be in our network who can help us. They just didn't hear your articulation of where you want to go.
Exactly. I love that. And like that whole getting into your mind about it, right? Like, and spending way too much time in that place where, you know what, like, what, you can't go back. So
Yeah.
what have you learned from whatever happened, right? The challenge, or, the sucky thing,
Right.
right? And look for the lessons in those things, and, move forward. And I think that's really important. I mean, like, look at like Robert Kiyosaki. I mean, he went bankrupt, like a couple of times.
Right.
He got back up and kept going, like,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And right. And sometimes the little challenges that may come through on our business journeys, like if you're talking about, having an online business, they're minimal, right? Like they're nothing compared to some of the bigger problems that can happen. And so what does it serve us to spend so much time in that place where we shoulda, coulda, woulda, like it doesn't serve us. Like, let's move on,
Exactly.
right? Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And go ahead.
no, I was just, yeah, go ahead.
Well, one of the things you said just made me, think of again the importance of us, not only articulating our destination, but in the short-term goals along our way is to make them measurable and time-bound. So again, we can always give ourselves permission if we don't meet a target, if we don't meet a date. That doesn't mean don't have a target, don't have a date. And we can have these milestones. Imagine a road trip where you're going to stop at 6 different cities. Your destination, your path to success can be more of that concept. And so the first stop may be only 5 hours away. We're not talking, like you're going to drive for days and days. And those shorter term destinations, I think the more we can put a time and some type of measurement around them, the more we can figure out what should we stop doing in the rest of our day that's going to help us get to our destination more quickly. And what I love about, focusing on what the person wants, it's not about, I'm going to work all the time, I'm going to be so productive that I don't have a life. Like, you can figure out whatever tactics work for you. However, if you say like, my destination is X, then you should give yourself permission to stop doing the things that's like stopping you from getting there, right? And it's like this weird psychological thing where it forces us to start taking excuses away. Like I have 2 really bad habits, and I struggle with them to this day. And I would call myself a very productive person, and I still struggle with these 2 things. Number one is I do this learning procrastination where I know I have something to do. And I'm like, I'm going to go read this blog post. I'm going to listen to this podcast. I'm going to go watch this YouTube video. And it's not like junk, somebody dancing on TikTok. This is how I'm justifying it to myself. This is me learning a new idea, hearing from this expert. And while, perhaps it's better to program my mind with something that is, a bit more positive, I'm still just consuming and not making. Right. And I'm just delaying whatever work I was supposed to be doing. And so I have to force myself to kind of really face that. The other thing that I struggle with is I constantly see a new opportunity and I'm like, ooh, I could go do that. And then, I kind of get going. And it's like, ooh, I can do that. And so I found in both cases, what I've done is using a system called calendar journaling. And what that is you use your calendar, just your regular Outlook, Gmail, whatever you use, nothing fancy. You don't have to pay for a new product. And you do a diary/journal of all the 15 increments of time on how you spent that day. Sleep, hygiene, wanted to watch Netflix, like whatever you do, you log it. I've been doing this for a very long time. And what it forces me to do is not think like, how can I be productive every moment? But to be honest with myself and say, oh, that 90 minutes of time was actually on YouTube, right? And it's okay. And then sometimes actually we'll schedule, consuming some media or just hanging out or doing nothing. But the point is that we have finite minutes, not just in our day, but in our life. And we should treat our time the way we think about spending and managing our financial budget. We have a time budget. And so this calendar journaling is one of the tactics I've used to kind of get myself focused and not get distracted by the shiny object and not, procrastinate and not actually complete the work that's going to get me to my destination.
And those are good examples because I can, guilty. I find myself doing that too, the shiny object syndrome. I think we all have it. But yeah, it's like, focusing more, right? Like getting more focused. And I think that calendar example is really good. Like if say you're a mom, or if you have a job or whatever, time blocking can be really important for you and for all of us, really. And then, but tracking also, like track what you're doing, and you can, right? And then you can see the patterns and you can see like, okay, well, maybe I know I could have, taken that time to do something different or whatever. But
Right. And as I say quickly, for folks who hear a system like that and are like, oh my goodness, that just stresses me out even thinking about running my life this way, don't think of it as something you have to commit to permanently. I'm a bit extreme with these types of things, but commit to doing it for a week or 30 days. Give yourself a 30-day challenge and guarantee you will find something that you're doing in your life that could go at the expense of achieving your destination more quickly. You're going to
Mhm.
say something.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, well, I can't remember. It's all good. It's okay. It's okay because what you said was awesome. Like I say that, right? We're not married to our choices. Like they're not set in
Yeah.
stone. We can change our minds at any time. And the whole idea of doing it for a couple of weeks or a month, then you can see patterns and you can start changing to be better, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so LaShawn, let's talk about, so how does one evaluate opportunities?
Yeah. So at the core, what we've talked about a lot, so far is kind of the mindset piece, but also, kind of hinting at this core value. I believe that business ownership is one of the most predictable paths to financial independence. And financial independence is just you own an asset or collection of assets that pay you more than you spend every month. And I like the really simple math of that. So again, you can plug in the values on what those numbers mean for you. But when I reference financial independence or FI, that's what I'm talking about. And so I like to connect that with the idea of how to evaluate a business with a few quick concepts. First, we talked about choose your obsession, choose your community, right? Like who is going to be your customer. And then instead of saying like, all right, I have the perfect product for them, you're going to integrate with that community, talk to that community, and find what problems they're willing to pay on a recurring basis to solve, right? And so to put it in, almost like a framework that is pretty repeatable. First, you have to kind of choose your obsession, or at least acknowledge your obsession. Choose your customer, right? So that gets you started. And then you need to figure out what is your destination. And so again, is it a financial target? Is there a timing piece? Is there something structural in life where you're like, I need to have a certain part of my schedule free because of other life commitments? There's a list of things where you're basically negotiating with yourself that says, here are the must-haves. Here are the should haves, here are the nice to haves, and here are the never haves. And you just make that list and you kind of populate that and give yourself permission to change it if you need to. And what that's going to allow you to do is to start like moving in the world, looking around and say, ooh, there's opportunities. You're going to see them everywhere as soon as you start writing these things down. Now, those are the basics. Most folks can, intuitively kind of get to that. Where it becomes really powerful is embracing this concept of the customer development process. Now, there have been many books written on this in different capacities. One of the most popular is The Lean Startup. And that if folks want to read that book, it's a great read on how to think about iterating your way to business success instead of like hiding in a corner, working and toiling for 2 years, and then showing up and say, "Hello, world! Here's my book. Here's my course. Here's my product. Here's." It's really kind of building in public and iterating, in smaller pieces. But one of the core principles there is you have to go and seek out your customer and get their feedback, and then work that into whatever your product or service is, and then repeat, test how they responded to it, and then go talk to them again. And this is one of the most critical places where early in the choose your business place that I see folks get caught up. And I talk to quite a few folks. I love speaking with as I said, folks in underrepresented communities, where that's women, people of color, maybe there's somebody in a rural spot where they're like, we have no startup community. I just like folks who have told themselves, and it may be true, that I don't have the right opportunities to meet my business goals because of something structurally that is that I'm disadvantaged to. And I like to say, first off, if you're interested in a space that is not going to give you the right capital, at least at the right time, or maybe they're not going to give you the same level as the next person, all of these things can be acknowledged. And you should think to yourself, do I want to play the game on hard mode? right? And so I really, really, push people to think about, all right, are you solving a problem where you require permission from other people for you to be successful? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that, but I think we must ask ourselves that question, right? And if you don't, you're going to get yourself in trouble quickly, because you might find yourself, a year's worth of time invested, and you're like, no one will give me a shot. No one will invest in X. No one, and all those things may be true. But if we rewind back to the inflection point of what problem are you going to solve, much of that we could make that decision before we commit to the idea. But the next part of that customer development process is talking to customers, like figuring out who that community, your tribe is, and talking to them. And so if anyone says they're starting a new business, and they tell me that, I'm building the product, LaShawn, could we talk about marketing or different ways to get more customers? And I'll ask them, what are the 3 key takeaways? This is one of my standard questions. What are the 3 key takeaways from the first 100 customers that you've spoken to? And if they can't distill it, or they're like, LaShawn, I haven't talked to 100. I talked to like 7 people. I know this is a good idea. I know.
Mm-hmm.
I will come back and say, when you've spoken with 100 people and you've distilled your top 3 takeaways, I would love to have a conversation. Now, I'm happy to help people through that. But what this forces is, number one, you're not constrained by money. It's not like, until somebody gives me $10,000, I can't go do this or hire this person or buy this piece of equipment or take this trip. You can get on the internet, find people that you used to work with, connect with folks in forums, on social media. Like, this is work, but it doesn't necessarily have to come out of your financial bank account. It comes out of your time bank account. And so when you invariably, after you've spoken to 20, 30 people, I found it's usually around that. Whatever idea you thought was a good idea, it's not the best idea. And you've saved yourself so much money and time by just talking to people. But here's the other reason this is so, so powerful. If you really commit to talking to 100 people, you're going to meet potential customers that they're going to see your journey. They're going to be part of your social proof. They maybe give you a case study or referral or recommendation, word of mouth. You're going to meet potential investors. They're going to say like, hey, this isn't my thing, but I know somebody who actually invests in this, and I really like the way that you're talking to customers first. And then you're going to meet potential vendors or partners, and then you're going to meet potential employees. Like, even if you have a solopreneur business where it's just a business of one, you might have contractors or you might have early hires. And this process forces you to get out of your head and go talk to real humans. And so much of our early idea is usually just wrong. And so anyway, that's kind of at the heart of how I like to help folks navigate whether they should go start a business, whether it's a bakery, a software company, a furniture brand, they want to launch a course. Like, it does not matter, what your product or service is. You got to talk to folks, and you need that volume to break through the noise in your head.
No, it's true. And you're right, because like I started an online program 3 years ago, actually, and I believe it's already been 3 years, but I did my due diligence. And you're right, it is work, right? And I think that the best information you can get out of having an actual conversation in person with them, not in person,
Yes.
but like what we're doing now, right? Like,
Yeah.
because then you can really ask the right questions to figure out who they are, what their struggles are, and then you get really deep into the I think more so than you would just a regular survey or something like that. But it is work, but it's so rewarding at the end, because you can truly go into the direction that is gonna allow you the success that you're looking for, right? But it's funny, because when I thought I'm more than just, I have a stock photo membership, and I'm like, I'm more than just that. Like, I know I can teach something, right? But I was a photographer, and I was like thinking in my head, I'm going to teach a program teaching people how to become a photographer, right? And I did my market research, and I polled my audience. I talked to the audience and the people and all that, and nobody wanted that, right?
It's
And I was
crazy,
like,
right?
right? And I'm like, my audience is not that person, right? And 3 years later, I have a program called Beautifully Branded Business, and that's been my core program for the last 3 years, which I love. But that's why it's so important. Imagine if I had done a course about photography. I mean, I would have been face
Right.
flat on my way out the gate, right?
Well, and what you're hitting on is, I think there's two important takeaways for anyone listening that you're calling out. Number one, if you dive straight into the making without validating with your community slash customer base, you might just be burnt out or spent emotionally or financially, from a time standpoint. And then you start making less confident decisions because maybe you're in a financial place where you're like, well, now I just have to make money, and you're not doing it the right way. And so the idea of not expending whatever your budget is, for your ideas, is really important. But then the other connected thing is, if you look at how much time you're going to invest in, some type of idea exploration, I like to give myself kind of these time blocks where I'm allowed to change my mind at any point outside of my big decision blocks. And so let's say I'm just kind of roaming around, I'm looking at ideas. I have a little text file that I keep in notes, and I just write down all these ideas. And when I get something where I'm like, I think this is this could be something, I'll allocate a full day. Only thing I'm allowed to do in this day is start to collect all the links, write down information, and I force myself to write 2 to 6 pages in narrative form, articulating this to say, all right, if I had a mentor, coach, or sponsor, I want to come back to that in a moment, that would read this, what type of feedback would they give me? And from that point, I think one of the things that's really valuable is it just forces clarity of thought. And then I'll just let it sit for a week or so. And then when I come back, if I still think it's a good idea, I just start looking around again, right? But I give myself permission after I finish that document to say that wasn't so great. And let me tell you, I have a lot of these documents on my cloud drive, because most of them just aren't that great when I force myself through this window. But at the point where I actually say, all right, I think this one's it, then I force myself. I use a 90-day window. I've seen people use 30 and 60. I think those work as well. But I give myself a 90-day window, and I'm not allowed to quit within that window. Like, once I get to that next stage, and at each point, I'm just expanding the time commitment that I'm making. And that allows me to have a natural end state if it doesn't work, like kind of giving myself psychological permission. But it also forces me to ignore shiny, object syndrome and say, maybe, but I'm going to get to that after this 90 days. And again, these are just tactics that I've used to kind of help keep myself on track, because if I don't have some type of toolkit, I'll just be on a windy road instead of the highway.
Yeah, no, and you're doing things more on point and on purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really good tip, to have that, 30, 60, or 90. And I think 90 days, I like the 90 days myself.
I mean, it forces you to get into some type of habit. We talked about consistency. A lot of business success is about consistency. The reason I love the talk to 100 customers is you kind of can't cheat your way in most instances to that number. You can't just say, I'm going to talk to friends and family. Most of us are going to tap out and not have 100 close friends or family members who are also our target customer for whatever we're trying to explore. So it forces you to meet strangers and kind of build this muscle that, as a side effect, which is super important, for folks who don't believe they are great salespeople, and we all have to be great salespeople to be successful, whether we're selling to a potential employee, an investor, or our customer. We have to learn how to sell. Talking to these 100 folks are going to help anyone find their confidence in how they show up and interact and sell whatever their concept / vision is. And at the end of it, making our product many times, or even delivering our service, that's not the hard part. Many times the selling is the hardest part. And so what I love about, customer development and talking to 100 people before you start building something, it helps you exercise that muscle ahead of time, So you reduce a lot of the stress that could come if you're trying to learn how to sell while you also actually have to sell your new, product or service.
Watch it's this thing that we get tripped up on, right? Like we could do a whole conversation about that, but why is it so hard for some of us to go out there and sell, right? Like it's a disservice to not sell, I think, right?
If
People
you
are
believe in what you're making.
looking,
Yeah.
yes, they're looking and ready to spend money on that thing that you want to
I
sell
have a
them.
problem. Can you solve
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
exactly, right? When you're looking for that thing that's going to solve your problem, we are ready and willing to spend the money on it, right?
Yeah.
So when you're not out there sharing your offers and selling your offers or your product, whatever that looks like, it's a disservice to them, first of all, but also someone else is out there selling and offering, selling their offers. And so you kind of lose.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's on both sides. And I think to that point, sometimes people hear the word sales and they think like slimy used car sales guy. And it's like, no, we don't care about that dude. We want folks to imagine themselves. If you want to have a more polished approach, if you want to have a more empathetic approach, if you want to have a different tone in how you speak, these are all parts of your personal toolkit. So I don't believe there is like one way to sell. One of the best ways that I've seen demonstrated, are folks who also show how it worked for them, where they were the customer. And so instead of saying, here's how you should go solve this problem, you can say, here's how I solve this problem. And so there are all sorts of tactics where I believe you can be yourself, but I don't believe we should use, I think it's a cop out rather to say, oh, I don't sell because, it's cringy, or I don't like those are just excuses for you not to get out there in the world and exchange this value. And to your point, if people have problems they're willing to pay to solve, you're doing your customers a disservice if you're not selling it, because aren't they going to just go buy a lesser product? Now, if it's true your product isn't as good, this is back to the customer development process. How can you go figure out which part of the customer's pain points to really focus on?
and I love what you said. And if we don't get good at selling, or if we don't get that mindset out, that talk out of our mind, we're not gonna arrive at our destination, right? It's
Exactly.
gonna take forever to get there. So we don't want that for you. So full permission to go out there and sell,
For all of
sell,
us.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what type of businesses are worth starting or investing in?
Yeah. So one of the things I look at, if we get to specific categories, I think if you are deeply, truly obsessed with, I think, what I'll call some of the worst businesses from a financial standpoint, I still think you should do them. You should do them in a very thoughtful way. So some of the worst businesses financially, and the reason they're the worst is because they're unpredictable. And when you don't have a lot of cash flow, unpredictability is your enemy. And so any type of food and beverage, restaurant or retail, the reason this class of businesses are tricky is your foot traffic is going to vary, but your labor and all of your inputs on food and other things, need to be ready just in case you have a rush. And you'll almost never quite get it right. And so, what I like to think for folks who are saying like, I still want to start this bakery, I've like, go figure out what can you do to test your concept with a 1-day commitment. Then maybe find a recurring market or other type of place to go and kind of think about that and work yourself up. Maybe then you get a cart or a food truck. Then you work your way up to kind of a committed retail space. And it's going to be different for each of these types of businesses. But the goal is you're making small commitments that you can learn from, because maybe you get the location wrong. Maybe you have too many SKUs, slash, kind of product options. Maybe your messaging, your offer is off, your pricing's off, your suppliers are off. Like, so many things will go wrong. You don't want to be solving those problems while you now have like a 5-year commitment on a lease. And it's easy to romanticize it. Like, I'm in business because I, got my business license. I got my phone number. I got this domain name. My email's running. Like, you tell yourself all these things, like, now I'm in business. No, you are in business when a customer has given you $1. And I love the concept of one of your first milestones is to convince someone to give you $1, not some fake, like arbitrary. I'm talking legit $1. If your service costs $800, I always believe you should sell it at least once for $1. And the reason this forces you to get that first like money in the bank, but also, hopefully that person can, you have to be honest. Like you don't have to say, oh, we do all of these things. You're like, no, I'm just getting started. I would love to get your feedback on how to make the best product in this category. And in exchange for that, all I ask is for you to be honest with your feedback and pay me $1, and I'd love to over deliver. And when you look through that lens, it's really empowering because you don't have to be afraid of, well, what is the right price and all these types of things. So any of those types of businesses like that have very low margins, that have a lot of unpredictability, I would say if your obsession truly is to, have the best sandwich shop, the best wedding cakes, these types of things, find the right progression to iterate your way up to that. So that's, I think, a big bucket. Next up are any type of digital products. That's where I spend most of my day. So whether it's an info product or it's a piece of software, and by info product, that could be a book or that could be a course. It could be templates. I don't believe that some of the template businesses are going to last very long, as increasingly AI is getting smarter and smarter, and it's going to be able to generate some of these templates for a specific scenario. So if someone's like, I have the best Notion templates for small business. Okay, well, these AI tools are going to be able to generate the best Notion template for the dog walking business, or whatever the specific area is. And so I think some of these are going to be a bit more brittle, but I love the digital space, especially for solopreneurs or people who are just going to have 2 to 5 employees, because you don't need permission, but you can also iterate really fast. If something's not working, you can go try something out. For marketing with digital products, you really only have 4 attributes. You have email marketing, which is more of a push technique. Someone opts in and then you push or drip emails to them. You have paid advertising, you have direct sales, and you have organic marketing. And whether it's a podcast or it's your social media account, writing on Twitter or /X, LinkedIn, all of these places, these are all tools that you have in your toolkit that you control. And sometimes they take a while to kind of progress. This is, again, why you need to talk to real people. Don't let the algorithm give you permission to talk to customers. Go find them and then write about those experiences. But I love digital products because you're in control and they have very high margin. And so, for most ideas, you have the expertise or you have the skill set to craft a digital product that would be useful to folks, that's going to exceed whatever you made in your your day job prior to. So if you made $40,000 a year, guaranteed there's $120,000 info product sitting in you. If you made $500,000 a year, there's $1.5 million dollar idea there. And that 3 to 4x multiple, I think, applies to almost every person who is listening. And so I love that category because you get to kind of progress that way. Some of the other industries that I'm very excited about, these are less about kind of the structure or the shape of the business. Industries that I'm very excited about are these old businesses that for years and years still haven't been digitized. And so think about any, largely business to business type service that is still using emails and maybe even a fax machine. Sometimes these are called boring businesses. Cody Sanchez talks a lot about these types of businesses. And I think those are very interesting if you don't have a burning idea that this is the problem I want to solve. If you have a good organizational mindset, you're great with process, and you will commit to becoming great with managing and dealing with people. Those are great businesses because sometimes you can actually even buy the business instead of just starting it. And then the last bucket are, capital intensive and or, fast growing startups. And I've invested in, as an angel in over 30 startups. I've done, a handful of private equity deals where we're buying or acquiring a company. And I would just say for most folks, that's where you're going to get the extreme upside of wealth. and you probably shouldn't start there. I love this quote from Charlie Munger that is, go get about $100,000. He calls it the first $100,000. And he's like, it'll change your psychological space when you have that sitting in your account. Now, he said that a long time ago. So with inflation, that's probably, $200,000. But the reason that's a good call out is some of these other businesses might be the path to get you out of debt and to get that first $200,000. And then once you have that, you can chase some of these moonshot ideas and you can go get, capital. But if you're trying to survive and thrive at the same time, it can create a lot of stress in your life. And so these are some of the buckets that I really love. And regardless of where you play, if you really commit to, kind of people and process, who are the other humans that are going to help your business, whether they're employees, contractors, vendors that you might hire, and then what's the process I'm going to put in place? I think that's critical. Last thing I'll say on this kind of arcing kind of point is try to start a business with one process, one product/service, and one channel. And by channel, I mean like the way you sell it. Let's say you have a soap company and you're going to sell soap. Don't start selling soap in the specialty store and try to get a wholesale count in a big retailer and you sell it on Amazon and then you sell it directly. Like, no, stop. Sell it in one place. Ideally sell one thing and have one process. When I say process, I mean one set of steps that identify how you're going to sell it, how you're going to make it, how you're going to deliver it / support it, and then repeat that. And then once you figure that out at the smaller scale, you want to repeat that as long as possible before you say, I'm going to add another product. And what we do many times, we start adding products because the first product actually isn't working. And that's a cop-out. And this is back to the punchline that if you iterate your way to that, you'll have enough time, emotional capacity, and you won't need as much money to keep fixing that product instead of expending all of it on one shot. It doesn't work because it never works on the first try. And then you're like, well, I should just give up. So this is a combination of kind of what businesses to consider, but also a framework for how you want to execute along the way. And again, what I found is if you're not trying to rush and you're saying, hey, I can go give this idea a good 90 days and see what happens. Then I can give it a year. Then I can commit to 2 to 3 years. These types of commitments and these types of cadences, businesses will still fail. If you do everything right, there will still be places where you got the timing wrong, where it wasn't on you, but you will be so much more valuable to yourself and the market on your next idea. And you'll realize that you don't really need permission from so many other folks to be successful.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And, even like in the online space, code being culture, having an online course or templates, like you said, right?
Yep.
Like in that space, I think that oftentimes too many of us, what we do is that when it doesn't work the first time, we go and figure out what can we create that's going to work instead of, finessing and refining the thing that we created.
Right.
And because sometimes, like you said, it's the messaging or it's the, it's the offer that maybe it's, your transformation. Sometimes that's all it is, but we call it quits because we didn't make a sale. So many times. But there's so many things that can go into that factor, right? Like even just energy around you selling, that can affect also your sales, totally. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So one last thing I wanted to talk to you about, and then, because I think we could probably go on for hours. And we lost your focus there, LaShawn.
Oh, sorry about that. There we go.
There we go. But I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation. So I'm like, I'll just tell him after.
Yeah.
So, because if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be like, but that
what
doesn't
happened?
Make sense. I know LaShawn lost focus on his Zoom.
And I apologize that because I bought one of these fancy webcams. Hopefully, there we go.
Oh.
And it's supposed to do all the things. And look, this is what we were just talking about. These folks, they built this fancy webcam and has all these features. And I'm sure they're like, well, it's going to do this, this, and this. And it can't keep focus, right? Now, hopefully they're talking to their customers and they're going to ask, are there any challenges that you see with this product? And they're going to figure out how to quickly fix that in, days or single digit weeks. and not let it go to double-digit weeks or months. And
Yeah.
it's just a good example of like when something's broken, you need to dive in and have a good process to listen to your customers. Otherwise, I'm not going to recommend this camera to the next, the next person.
Yeah, your fans.
Yeah, exactly.
Put it on your resource list, right? Tech.
Yeah, exactly.
Tech. Yeah. Okay. So how do you automate your business in order to run it more efficiently? Because I think that, that's what most of us want, right? Like we want to automate our business. Like once we have all of that figured out, we want it automated so it can run it more efficiently so that we're not spending 10 hours a day sitting at a computer because maybe our destination was working 1 to 2 hours a day and then having the rest of the time, working your business around your life and not the other way around.
Right. Well, if you do focus on digital products, I think that's where we can start. It's the easiest place to automate as much as possible. And so, for simplicity's sake, we'll stay focused there. It goes back to that single process. And for all the steps where something gets handed over to a person, or you need to make a decision, or there is an event that has to occur before you take action, you're going to write down a process and all the steps that identify those pieces. And you're then going to go back to the beginning of that process and measure what does good versus great look like from a metric. And you pick a metric that is easy to both understand, easy to collect. You don't want to turn into your job being a data collector. Hopefully you can automate many of these events. And, your question was, how do you automate the things? The first step is document the process and put, kind of target or metrics along the way for all the steps. That is your foundation. Because once you do that, there are so many tools out there. Some of my favorite are simple automation tools like Make.com and Zapier. Microsoft has one called Power Automate. All of these tools are very similar. It doesn't really matter which one you want to choose. But let's say, you have something like Zapier. What it does, it's like a supercharged if then that type service. And it'll say, anytime you get an email over here, go add this cell to, or this row to or your Google Sheet. Anytime I get a phone call on this service, go log it in my HubSpot, CRM. And there's all of these kind of capturing customer interactions, logging it somewhere, have a conversation. I need to transcribe the meetings. All of these things become administrative work. And I think that's one of the first places to start automating is like getting that administrative stuff off your plate. And it's actually quite simple if you have a holistic view of your process. If you don't, you're going to hear about all these automation tools, all these new AI things, and you're going to be like, oh my goodness, it's like taking over you'll just want to ignore it all because it won't make sense. But if you document this process and you say, all right, I have 17 steps in my process. Can I reduce the number of steps? Okay, nope, that's as far as I can go. All right, which of these have the biggest, kind of most repetition? Which of these have areas that are low risk or maybe not time sensitive? And then you can then kind of one by one go and start to automate these tasks. And a lot of what you'll find you're doing is collecting information from a customer, analyzing it, and then taking some type of action. Sometimes it's archiving, storing, sometimes it's doing what have you. And then, culminating that into what experiments. This is the way I like to talk. So let's say you have a course or you have a coaching business or you make a SaaS product. It's easy or tempting to say, I need to add this new chapter. I need to re-record this, or I need to, add this new software feature. No, what you should do is talk to customers, merge your customer conversations with your vision. You're still in control, obviously. And then you're going to think of an experiment. You're going to try to say, my hypothesis is X. And then you're going to run some type of time-bound experiment and says, I'm going to send emails with this marketing copy, or I am going to try this new, tool to do, automated videos. I've seen these automated quote video services where folks are creating automated videos, then they go post them on Instagram Reels, and it helps them. They can go batch these things. And so it takes a little sound clip, and then it writes a little blurb about whatever your audience cares about. And then you can go create 30 of these things and just go schedule them. For certain audiences, they'll ignore that. For other customers, they love it, right? And so these are just experiments that you're not going to run these for months. You're going to run them for days or maybe a week or two. And then you say, did this work or did it not? And then how do you know if it works? Because it's improving the metric that you set on one of those steps. And that's why everything comes back to defining your process, setting the metrics. And it might sound like, okay, I'm not a finance person, I'm not an operations person. Like, if your audience is listening and they're like, this sounds so boring. Well, let me tell you what's even more boring. Like looking at an empty bank account with, all these things that coulda, shoulda went right, because you didn't kind of force yourself to have some discipline and structure. And so even if you're a person who this isn't energizing for, treat it like that gym workout. Like, I promise you your business and you will feel better if you go and do this. And lastly, kind of on that piece, most of these solutions are not expensive, right? There's a ton of expensive software, books you could buy. Like, most of these things just take clarity of thought and prioritization. And once you have that, you'll be surprised how quickly you can do a Google search to solve a problem once you know exactly what the task is in a particular part of your process and how you're going to measure. Because you can look at it and say, all right, wow, these people charge $90 a month for this SaaS product, but maybe it's a $500 problem. And it's very easy to make that decision, when you have that clarity. So I just love the idea of anchoring this on the single process. You don't have to be, especially again, if you're a solopreneur, you don't need all these departments. You don't need to replicate a big company. You need to try to keep as much of this in your brain as possible. And so kind of consolidating that process on sales, kind of the creation, delivery, and then the support is super helpful.
Yeah. And creating systems. But I love that, what I like to do is having kind of like a diagram of like your customer journey. Okay. Like they get this, and then how can we automate the future kind of like path, right?
Yes.
And then, yeah. And then a lot of email service providers have good integrations too. So you can kind of set it all up in there, right?
Yeah. And one of the things you hit on that's, I think, very important is, don't look at your journey or your process from an inward facing standpoint. Look at it through your customer standpoint, and don't imagine like, okay, well, I have to drive awareness, so I need to do some marketing, and then I need to give them the thing, and then maybe they're going to send me some support. Like, I think that's just a bubble for each of your offerings. Instead, think of the outcome-based journey that your customers are going on. Do they want to learn a new skill? Are they trying to connect with certain folks? Are they trying to, maybe you have a marketplace? Like, there's all sorts of problems you could solve, but don't think about the problem. Think about their journey to what their realization is. We talked a lot about destination as a metaphor. You want to articulate your customer's destination, and your process articulation should be that, because then you're just moving them around along those steps. And what I love about thinking about it this way, you might decide that to move people, more quickly through this process, I'm going to write this PDF, maybe an ebook or whatever. I'm not going to charge for that, and that's going to be at the top of this journey. And I'm not using the word funnel on purpose. I'm at, it's the early parts of this journey, and then when they get here, there's going to be this optional thing for them to go buy from me, and then that's going to help them progress. And even if they don't buy it, you're going to still figure out a way to keep them on their journey, at least communicating with you. And you'll find over time, there might be 3, 4, 5 products that you can develop as you mature, but you started with one simple process, one product, and one way to sell it.
Well, starting with the one product is so important, because a lot of us are multi-passionate and we have all these ideas.
It's hard to have that discipline.
Right. And then you're working on 5 things and nothing gets done because you're not working on the one thing.
Yeah. And you can have 5 things. Yeah,
yes.
I totally believe it. It's just it's an order of operations problem where you have to get the timing right.
Yeah, I love it. Oh my goodness, LaShawn, it's been so great talking all things, start your business, what kind things with you. I think we could have probably kept on going for hours, but
this is a fun conversation. I love your energy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, these are things that we could just talk about for hours and hours, just like just adding on to what can we talk about next,
Yeah, it's layering.
because right, because starting, building, growing your business is such a huge topic, right? And so, but I think that was a good start for us for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would wrap up with is, we talked a lot about kind of the process and where to focus. We still need our support structure, and one of the things I wanted to call back was this idea of coaching, mentoring, and sponsorship. For a lot of folks, hiring an expensive coach is expensive, and I believe coaching is probably one of the best ways for people to kind of accelerate their path. I like to tell folks, go read some books first. So when you're ready to hire your coach, you get the most out of the relationship if you're going to have a paid relationship. And then as you progress, you get to mentoring. I look at mentors as the people who are going to run through the scenarios. The coach is going to give you their curriculum or their process. They're going to get you in shape. The mentor or the mentor is going to kind of help you kind of work through what actually is going on. And then the sponsor is going to use their social capital to unlock a door. And for your audience, which are many women who are thinking about starting a business or who are starting a business, running their business. There's this great study by Harvard that calls out that women are over mentored and under sponsored. And basically what it says, like, there's a lot of men out there giving women advice, right? We spent this whole conversation, me sharing some of the things that have helped for me, but some of it can come off as advice. But how many people are actually willing to use their social capital to vouch for someone? And so we can do all this skill building, we can do all this getting ready, but at some point we still need other humans to support us. And I think that's an important reminder. And so, one thing that I would call out, I don't personally have a coaching business, but I love to do unpaid sessions with folks, usually 15 to 30 minutes, just to make sure people have another human to bounce their ideas off, to give them some feedback. And so if anyone out there is listening in your audience who is like, all right, this is interesting, what do I do now? I don't have a book to sell or, a course for people to enroll in. But if you want to find me on LinkedIn or Twitter and you want to schedule, a short conversation, like, I would love to talk to you, because what I found is the reason most people won't sponsor you is they don't have enough interaction points. And so you have to become, I believe, typically someone's coworker, their coach, their mentor, their manager, for you to get those opportunities. And then they are willing to use their social capital to sponsor you. And so that's a big, kind of punchline I'd like to share with anybody who's interested. And you might listen to my feedback and say, LaShawn, I 100% disagree. That's okay, right? We still are in this process, again, of talking to strangers, trying to figure out how to best get to our destination.
Oh, that's good. And that was the first time I've heard about this. Like, this was the first time, that someone put it like that. And I think it's really interesting. So that's a whole nother podcast episode.
Yeah. We're all over the place. Hopefully folks are staying with us, they're engaged, but you and I are definitely
but I love
fun.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what it's all about. Fun,
yeah.
and being able to serve, and hopefully the readers got a lot of insight and good tips from this conversation. But yeah, no, that's really good. So thanks again, LaShawn. And so you said they can find you on Twitter and LinkedIn, and obviously your website, right?
Yeah, name of my business is Kager Investments. The group email is grow@cagr.com. But if you just want to have a one-on-one conversation, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm just LaShawn Smith is my username. And if you just want to have a casual kind of, hey, you can reach me on Twitter/X, and it's just at LaShawn.
Awesome. Well, great talking to you, LaShawn. And I'm going to have all those links in the show notes anyway, so you don't have to. You can just click away and find LaShawn. Yeah, it's been awesome talking to you. I'm so happy that we connected.
Likewise, and best success to your business as well. I always love learning about new businesses. And so I think anyone who is helping other folks create their business or anything along that path is super valuable. So hopefully we can help the current or next generation. I always, we didn't talk about this. That's, again, another convo. but you don't have to be young to start your business. Any of us can find the right energy if we have the right support structure.
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if you're listening to this, I will talk to you on the next episode.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Build Your Beautiful Business podcast. If you did, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Julie's included a link in the shows to make it nice and easy for you. And if you want to create a beautiful, profitable business of your own, make sure to go unlock your access to Julie's 6 must-have resources for female entrepreneurs. These resources will help you build and grow your business with simplicity and ease. You can find them at juliecbutler.com/freebie vault. We'll see you in the next episode.